Welcome everyone. Today we have a webinar on grounding and verbal de-escalation, tools and practice for providers. We have two great presenters, Rosa Regincos and Mayumi Okuda. We would like to begin by saying a big thank you to our Alliance of Hope team. We have a wonderful team, and of course the biggest thank you goes to our lovely presenters. We're so excited about this presentation and so grateful for the time and the effort. We also want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, OVC, for their great support as always. And without further ado, I turn it over to you, Rosa.
So thank you for having us. It's really a pleasure to spend some time with you all and talk about grounding and de-escalation, as it is one of our favorite and main tools we use to assist clients in the Family Justice Center or clients who are hyper-aroused, or we're going to talk more about it, but we're going to use this tool in various different contexts. And we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what's grounding. Grounding is a set of strategies that aim at managing strong emotions when these threaten to overwhelm and disrupt a person's functioning. So basically, grounding helps trauma survivors stay focused on the here and now and reduce the intensity of any given emotion. Grounding overall helps avert an all-out emotional storm. So grounding focuses on shifting the attention towards the external world and away from any negative feelings. With this, we mean that grounding is a tool that helps us focus from in to out. We are like trying to get the attention from inside to outside. Other names for grounding are centering, looking outward, as I was saying, and healthy detachment. Grounding is a technique that increases awareness of the here and now and reduce PTSD symptoms, such as flashbacks and re-experiencing symptoms, such as intrusive recollection. Grounding also helps the person to deal with dissociative experiences, such as spontaneous trance, depersonalization, and time loss.
So basically, when we have somebody who's experiencing, this is an example, and it's here on the slide, but somebody who's, say, encountering a trigger of a trauma, and this person goes into right into a flashback. At that moment, the person is kind of, not in contact with the present, but can be, feeling like they're out of control or they're out of their body, and basically what grounding is trying to do is to remind the person that they're in the present, not overwhelmed, and then they're back to regaining some control.
Yeah, exactly. So also want to mention before we continue with the presentation that grounding is a very simple and very effective tool, to the point that I'm using it as a therapist that I am, like, very often in my practice, and I use it at the beginning, during, or at the end of the session as a way to really focus our attention on the here and now. I never thought it would be such a useful technique, but when I start using it and seeing the results, I just start to truly believe, and I'm just a big fan of it. This is why we are so pleased to be able to have this talk about this. It's important to differentiate between grounding and relaxation, because grounding is not a relaxation exercise, and that's a very important differentiation. We all know, and you are the experts on treating these patients, that patients with PTSD may become very anxious when trying a relaxation exercise. For people who have been survivors of sexual trauma, closing their eyes and trying to let go might be very triggering and very, very bothering, and may lead even to dissociation symptoms. Words like relax, let yourself go, might trigger previous abuse, like I just mentioned, like sexual abuse. So we need to understand that grounding is not relaxation for that specific reason. I mean, we want the client at every part of the exercise to feel that they have the power, that to feel that they are in control. Because we know that relaxation is a very useful technique as well, but it's not aimed to get the outcome that we want to get with grounding, which is like being grounded, centered, being in the here and now, and being connected with the present. So grounding, again, is a very active strategy that works through distraction and connection to the external world. Relaxation, as I said, is more passive, is letting go of mental and muscular tension. And relaxation also is about looking inward to calm the mind. So it's important to really stress the fact when we are practicing grounding with our clients or our patients that we're gonna do something now, but it's important you're always in control, always with your eyes open, and that's not a relaxation exercise. And that, from our experience working in the Justice Center, we thought that was very important to make the differentiation because patients were becoming to feel anxious or like not comfortable, thinking that maybe something that they have to let go, close their eyes, and feel vulnerable. Why is grounding helpful? So grounding is very helpful because it helps build the capacity to regulate strong feelings. We are all very familiar with emotional dysregulation within this population we work with, and it's really a great tool to build the capacity to give the client the sense of control and the toolbox that they need to emotionally regulate. So we know that people with history of trauma either feel too much, they feel emotionally overload, or too little. That's another characteristic of this population, feeling numb, feeling detached, feeling that they cannot really connect with what's going on. So understanding these two sides of the spectrum, either feeling too much or feeling too little, we're going to begin to see how grounding can be helpful. So if we think that, and we know from our experience that strong emotions tend to escalate into unmanageable internal experiences when fueled by trauma-induced thoughts and self-judgment, it's important to have tools to regulate that, to give the client these simple exercises to start using when they're feeling that they are escalating, that they are feeling that they cannot manage the thoughts or um, emotions that are coming up for them. Let's say when they are in front of a trigger, or they are like seeing their abuser is in court, etc. Emotional dysregulation creates a threat to the survivor that can become the problem. So we all know that when somebody's trying to really protect themselves, and they can start using unhealthy coping, as we said. At some point, that was something that may have been useful for the survivor to protect themselves. And sometimes we know that eventually this becomes something that is unhealthy and is not a healthy coping for them eventually. Knowing how to manage emotional dysregulation and feeling management in general, it's a great tool for everybody, especially with our clients and survivors of trauma. Talking about this emotional dysregulation, we're going to provide a handout at the end of the webinar with the emotional thermometer, which would be this concept of taking our emotional temperature. So the same thing that we are taking our body temperature with a thermometer, it's very important that we, as providers and also our clients, begin to take the emotional temperature at any given point, just to get familiar with their numbers. Which number am I? Right? If we imagine the emotional thermometer from 0 to 10, it's important we stress the fact that in order for us to respond from a point in which we are not taken by our emotions, but we're like responding instead of reacting, right? We're thinking about responding versus reacting. How can we respond to this threat or this trigger that we have in front of us? Well, it's important that we know that the emotional thermometer give us these numbers in between that we call the area of control. It's important we get familiar again. I want to stress this fact of the emotional thermometer in which we are in the middle of it, not feeling too little, not feeling too much. Because when we feel too little, we are detached or numb or dissociated, and we feel too much, and we are not responding. We are more reacting or underreacting, right? The emotional thermometer is also called the SAT scale, that is the subject unit of distress, and that's a very important tool to have in mind. As part of answering this question, right? Why is grounding helpful? So the problem calls for desperate solutions, such as self-injury, substance abuse, and other risky behaviors, right? Again, we are going back to the previous slides in which we know that when we feel emotionally dysregulated, because we have been faced with a trigger, or we are like having re-experienced symptoms or intrusive thoughts or images, our bodies, and we just make anything necessary or possible or anything that is available to us to protect ourselves from feeling so overwhelmed. And sometimes, unfortunately, we are not responding in a healthy way. So we always think about symptoms as reactions, symptoms as reactions of something that happened to us and they eventually had helped us manage. But when this belongs to the past, we sometimes have a hard time understanding that right now, that's no longer a healthy coping mechanism. So practicing grounding will build the capacity to tolerate negative feelings and manage different levels of intensity. So again, going back to the emotional thermometer, we want to find this middle ground is the window of tolerance, what we call. Is this window of numbers from 5 to 7 in which we are able to tolerate and respond versus react. So it provides grounding the person with the space in which they can regain composure and sense of control. Again, like talking about the window of tolerance in which we are feeling. I'm not saying that we are not feeling distress, but we are able to manage. And that's and clients know very well what this means for them, right? Between being in a 5, 6, 7 in which they can tolerate some sort of distress versus being in a 10, which we are totally dysregulated and not able to respond the best way possible for them. So again, grounding lessens the need to engage in self-injurious behavior and break the cycle. As we know, when we are in a 10 in our emotional scale and dysregulated and really reacting more than responding, some of our clients and trauma survivors engage in self-injurious behaviors as a way to numb their emotional pain through causing themselves physical pain, the way they describe. Mm-hmm. So it's important to introduce this technique to see if that would be able to assist them in those moments. And it helps survivors, just again, I'm repeating this, to develop emotionally stabilizing techniques for them to have a toolbox, and especially this important tool to use at any moment, anywhere and anytime. There are some very concrete guidelines when we are just teaching this tool to our clients and ourselves, and those are few of them, right? The first would be always keep your eyes open, Again, you're always in control. This is not a relaxation exercise, and that's the first difference. It's important to remain alert at all time and be aware of your surroundings. It's important this bullet point as we emphasize the importance of being in control and being aware of your surroundings. Nobody's gonna come behind you. Nobody's gonna, touch you. Nobody's gonna be, in your space because you're always in control. It's important to practice it as much as possible, and especially in the moments that you don't need it. I mean, I just ask my clients just to practice grounding when we are learning about it every day. Maybe when you are in the train, going to work, or when you are like sitting at your home. So because when the more you practice, the more you build this grounding muscle that we need, and the more available it is for you when you really need it. We know that when we don't practice exercises or tools that we learn, it's more difficult to access to them when we need them. So as we need to practice this at the beginning as much as we can. We can use it anytime and anywhere. It's important also to remain as neutral as possible and avoid judgments of good or bad. And we're gonna understand this a little bit better when we practice it actually, because we don't, this is not a right or wrong exercise. It's like it doesn't really matter. What really matter or what's important here is that you feel that you are like using mental distractions, using categories, engaging your brain, making your brain to be engaged in other parts, so you don't get emotionally going to that vortex or to that reacting space that can be a 9 or a 10. It's important to stick to the facts and do not elaborate on your emotional reactions to the facts. One example would be, and again, we're gonna understand this better when we do it. If I ask you, tell me a favorite person to engage you in this soothing grounding, and you are telling me my grandmother, but your grandmother passed away and you haven't been able to see her, and that's causing you a lot of sadness and distress, that wouldn't be a good moment to elaborate on your emotional reaction. It's important to switch into somebody else right now that can provide you with this soothing feeling, right? So in other words, we can even tell the clients, I mean, I'm going to be asking you questions and we're going to go through stuff, but if I see that your answer is not taking you where we want, I'm going to ask your permission to switch into another question if I see that this is not helping you. And that's also a way just to show respect and to show that we care about their feelings. But right now, the purpose of grounding is to take them out of, to center them in the here and now, and not taking them back to the past and thinking about the grandmother. Another important point is to know that there is no perfect way to do it. The goal is to develop coping skills in emotional management, and everybody will find their own way to do grounding. There is not right or wrong way. For some people, grounding works better when it's done physically or mentally. For other people, the soothing one is the preferred one, and this is why it's important to explore and to discuss with your client, what did you like about this exercise? What you didn't like? What do you think can help you more? Is there anything that you would like to introduce as part of those questions? And just kind of tailor it to their own experience and to their needs. Also, it's important to use grounding early in the negative mood cycle. For example, here we have the substance craving or beginning panic attacks. That's an important point because, again, thinking about the emotional thermometer, the earlier we start grounding, the better we're going to be able to center and to come to the here and now. I'm not saying that when you are in a 9, you cannot decrease the intensity or like bringing up a couple of notches down, which is the purpose of it. But it's gonna be more difficult if you are like up in the scale. So the sooner the better. Also part of this is helping clients to be attuned to their bodies, to their reactions. You know, I mean, as an expert on themselves that they are, it's important to say, hey, so when you are in court, right? Let's anticipate this moment and just see your perpetrator. How do you think you're gonna react? How do you think you're gonna manage? Okay, so I remember an example of one of my clients saying only the train ride there, only just knowing that I was going to court and I would face him, I began having panic attacks in the train. Thank you for telling me. That's great. It's important. Let's work on that when you leave your home, right? When you're just like entering in the subway station. How can you do grounding, grounding, grounding? Let's ground throughout the train ride and do anything that is really helping you. Also, it's important to focus on the present, not the past, by reminding of something you can do now. So you can say, you can read and write today. That would be a grounding self-affirmation. And again, as I said, create your own method of grounding. So we also, here this slide is just to remind ourselves, and you are all experts in working with population, that PTSD has different like clusters and trauma reactions. So one of them is the re-experiencing one. That is like we're going back again to these traumatic memories or accessing all these images and thoughts in the forms of nightmares, intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, traumatic reenactments. Another cluster of PTSD is in the form of hyperarousal symptoms, such as hyperactivity, sleep disturbances, easy startle, irritability, fearfulness, and difficulty concentrating. And the third one is the avoidance one, in which we tend to be more isolated, feeling disconnected from others, avoiding talking about anything related to the trauma, or avoiding any trauma triggers and reminders. Those are the three main clusters of PTSD, and grounding can definitely help when our client is experiencing one of them. So we're going to talk about, I mean, I don't know, Mayumi, if you want to add something to what I just said.
No, well, yeah, I mean, so this is one of the trainings that we started doing at the Bronx Family Justice Center, where we were piloting the integration of psychological and psychiatric services, you know, on site, and we found that you know, there were many instances where, you know, clients were coming and meeting with, you know, different personnel, as in NAFJC, attorneys, case managers, counselors, administrative team, and, you know, things, of course, you know, different stressors and typically different triggers or situations that would lead to extreme, you know, emotional reactions that were, of course, you know, very understandable given the circumstances, but that were coming to a level where they were interfering with what people had to do and being effective. So we started, you know, training the staff on grounding and de-escalation techniques to just like really help them with clients and all the work that they had to do. So different examples of when this happened, you know, basically where clients were going to court and facing, you know, abusive partners, or learning some, you know, bad news in terms of like, you know, not being able to obtain perhaps like a legal remedy, or, you know, facing their abusive partners for, you know, interacting with them in terms of like childcare, or just when an abusive partner would show up, you know, out of the blue. So those were circumstances where clients were struggling significantly, feeling very overwhelmed. I mean, in many instances, to the point of having a panic attack or dissociating, and that's where we started to really find this very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like the some of the examples of where it became very useful.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Mayumi, for reminding me that. I mean, basically, and after all this beginning presentation we just had, I mean, grounding is something that all of you who are listening to this webinar are doing, I'm sure, already in some sort of way. I mean, it's not something new. It's this like innovative technique that is gonna now just bring another level. You are all helping your clients and trying to bring down the dysregulation with grounding techniques. The difference, or what we are saying today, is that we're giving this a name. We're giving this a framework. We are really putting this in a box and saying what you are doing that seems that that you felt because your clinical skills and your experience with your clients were telling you to do. That's really a useful technique, and there is a way to learn it. There is a way to organize it, so we can package it and say that's a tool for you.
Yeah. And I think, another key point is that if you kind of like name it, you can also, give it back to the client so that they start using it and practicing and just having a more skills to deal with stressors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, as Mayumi said, Dr. Okuda said, different examples of practicing grounding would be with a substance abuse craving. Because at the beginning, when you're feeling the crave, you can start use grounding. When you have panic attacks, at the beginning of them, when you feel emotionally dysregulated after receiving bad news, when you're in front of the perpetrator, or when you are triggered or are reminded of the trauma, when working on your legal case. Again, that's a great point because we do so much collaboration with our attorneys, and even though you have to go and access those traumatic memories and really do the traumatic narrative, knowing that you have grounding while you're doing it, even is kind of keeping one foot here, one foot there. But with this one foot here, with grounding, it helps you go through what's important, the narrative, right, for your legal case. When feeling a strong impulse or to self-harm, when engaging in self-injurious behavior like cutting, burning. We in this particular example, we use like physical grounding. You have the need to physically harm you just to reduce the emotional pain or numbing. You can, instead of like a cutting, you can use like an ice, a couple of ice cubes and put them on your wrist, or use like um, a comb strongly against your body, against your arms, just to feel the pressure. Because what if you're looking is like the pressure or like the change in pressure, or causing a little bit of
almost like, I mean, because basically what's going on is many occasions the clients, what they're trying to do is they feel like they're not in their bodies, they're not in the present, and they're trying,
exactly,
to access resources to come, to the present and engage. So we're basically trying to teach them strategies that are going to be healthier.
Exactly. So now we're gonna describe the different types of grounding. We have 3 of them. We have the mental one that involves using mental distraction and games. We have the physical one that involves moving parts of your body and using the 5 senses, as we were talking about. And the soothing one involves using favorites, self-affirmations, and safe spaces. So examples of a mental grounding would be to ask your client to describe the environment in detail using all your 5 senses. For example, if you are in the waiting room, describe the colors, the smells, the sounds, how many windows, how many chairs. Another category would be playing categories games with yourself, like categories of music, name world cities, list of women names, basketball players, anything that give you, you can put in a category. Another thing would be engaging the client into a detailed everyday activity, such as a recipe, right? How you cook your favorite food. So start from the beginning, going to the supermarket, going home, unpacking, etc. Also doing math games. That's funny because those ones clients have a hard time with it and say, oh, I'm doing it wrong. And that's a perfect example. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's not I mean, I'm not just testing you on math. I'm just like really engaging your brain so you can get distracted. So doing math games, counting to 40 while skipping 3, 5, 7, also counting backwards, saying the ABCs. If you speak different languages, and a great exercise is to just say your ABCs in different languages. And another category, the physical grounding, would be focusing on your breathing, really going into the somatic experience of what is your breathing, noting its exhalations and inhalation, and noting the in-between sleep second, running cold water in your hands, as I said, or like an ice cube, or a brush with the pressure. Also planting your feet firmly on the ground, literally grounding, and taking your shoes if possible. Sometimes with clients, we just make them take the shoes and say, like, just feel the ground with the soles of your feet. Just feel the connection with earth. Move the shoulders up and down, roll your head, doing a full circle. Do it a few times. Also, one of my favorite ones is to do the spaghetti and tin soldier exercise, in which you tense the whole body like a tin soldier, and then releasing completely like cooked spaghetti, and doing it a few times. So you engage like the whole body in tensioning and releasing. Also, another very useful way would be carrying grounding objects in your pocket, such as a small piece of cloth or a rock, which you can touch and feel when triggered. That's a very portable tool. Stand up and shake your arms. Another great one would be stand close to a wall and push away the wall as hard as you can. So it's allow the force to rise up from your center. Eating a strong mint or gum to snap you out of it, right? Just kind of like really feeling like the coolness or like the spicy. Um, grab tightly onto your chair as high as you can. So you can, like, physical grounding, you can do different variations of it. And the soothing grounding, the last one, would be kind of engaging the client in favorites, right? So things like repeating the words of your favorite song, describing in detail a favorite person and the reasons why you like him or her so much. Can be fiction, non-fiction. Describe your favorite food and beverage. Just allowing the client to start thinking about their favorite food and their favorite way to get dressed and the favorite, place to be. That kind of start to providing them this feeling of soothing and wellness. Repeat a meaningful quote, saying saying a prayer, trying to say it slowly. Repeat safe statements. Let's say my name is Rosa and I am safe right now. I am in the present and I am safe. I'm strong and courageous woman. I'm not alone. That's a very good one, just to deal with your client, to have this safe statement. Because some of the clients, they get triggered and pulled to the past, right, in which they were children, they were harmed. It's important to remind them this is not longer happening, and you are right now here with me, and you are a safe person, and you are safe, and you are strong, and you are safe. Also describing the safe place, focusing on details, that's a great one. And that requires that you already build a safe place with your client in terms of like a favorite place in nature, or a place that they feel safe, and engage this guided imaginary work with the five senses, just walking them through their favorite place or the sanctuary, and reminding them to breathe, to hear, to touch, to see, the five senses into this safe place. And now, after all this spiel, I would like to practice with you, because it's gonna probably make more sense if you do it on yourself. so you can then teach your clients. So the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna just start like talking about what's grounding and just kind of setting you for the grounding exercise. And I'm gonna allow some time in between the questions so you can, as an audience, while you are listening to this webinar, answer those questions for yourself. So that's basically the way you would do it with your clients in the session. So let's begin with, before we start this exercise, notice how you are feeling right now. If you were to rate your negative feelings on a 0 to 10 scale, with 10 being the worst, how bad do you feel right now? The reason to rate feelings is to see whether grounding helps you to reduce the negative feelings. We will re-rate the feelings after the exercise. It's important to give a number rather than to describe the feelings. So please stick with a number. Many people with PTSD find grounding very helpful. In grounding, the goal is to turn your attention to the outside wall and to shift away from the inner wall of negative feelings. You can detach and distance from emotional pain. If you notice yourself focusing on negative feelings, try to let them go, like leaves in a fall breeze. Turn away from them, focusing your attention even stronger on the outside wall. You may want to think of this as changing the channel, just like a television where you can change the channel to get a different show. Keep your eyes open the entire time and look around the room as much as you like. Remember that you are always in control and try not to judge anything. Just notice what is. I'll give you grounding instructions for about 10 minutes, and we'll try 3 types of grounding: mental grounding, physical grounding, and soothing grounding. You can see which type works best for you. I'll also be asking a number of simple questions. So for us, for the audience, please answer these questions silently to yourself. So start by reminding yourself that you are safe, you are here in therapy today, and today is, and you are at. So now let's try to imagine putting a buffer between you and all your negative feelings. Imagine that your negative feelings are bundled up and put in a container. Next, think of something you can put between you and that container of negative feelings. Perhaps it's a wall, a suit of armor, or a big open field in the country, anything that creates safe distance between you and your negative feelings. Great. So now let's focus on the room. Look around the room and name as many colors as you can. Good. Now, name as many objects as you can. How many chairs are there? Are there curtains? How many windows? Look out the window and what's the weather outside? Great. Are there paintings of posters? If so, choose one and describe it. Not judging it, but just describing everything you can about it. Its color, shape, content. Excellent. What color is the carpet on the floor? How many doors are there? Are the lights fluorescent or yellow? What color is the paint on the walls? Do you see any words printed anywhere in the room? On a poster or a book? If so, read each letter backwards. Terrific. Great job. Next, now we're gonna try to name some facts. Tell me the names of cities, many cities as you can name. Wonderful. Now, try naming all the sports teams that you can remember. What about TV shows? Name as many as you can. Perfect. Now, take the number 100, subtract 5 from it, and notice the new number. Then, subtract 5 again, and notice the next number. Now, add 7. Come up with the next number. Subtract 12. Great. Don't worry if you cannot get this math right. Just let it go. Great. Now we are going to try physical grounding methods. You did a great job with the mental one. So let's go for the second. Keep following along with me. Notice your feet on the floor. They are literally grounded, connected to the floor. Wiggle your toes inside your shoes. Dig your heels gently into the floor to ground yourself even more. Good. Now, touch the chair. Tell me anything you can about it. What material is it made of? Now, touch the table or desk. What is it made of? Is it colder or warmer than the chair? Good. Now, find any object that's near you, perhaps a pen or your keys or something here on the desk. Pick it up and hold it, and say everything you can about it. What is it made of? How heavy it is? Whether it's cold or warm? What color is it? Now, clench your fist and notice the tension in your hands as you do that. Great. Now release your fist. Good. Now press your palms together with elbows to the side, pressing as tightly as you can. Focus all the attention on your palms. Now let go. Excellent. Now grab onto your chair as tightly as you can. Then, after a few moments, let go. Finally, roll your head around in a circle a few times. Excellent. Great job. Now let's move on and try soothing grounding. Let's start with favorites. Think of your favorite color. What color is it? Great. Think of your favorite animal. What animal is it? Think of your favorite TV show. What TV show is it? Excellent. Now think of your favorite season of the year. What season is it? And now think of your favorite time of the day. What time is it? Think of a favorite person. It may be someone you know, or it could be a famous person. Picture that person. Just tell me why is it your favorite person. Great. You can also think about a favorite upbeat song and try to remember the tune and the words. Allow yourself some time to do that. So now try to think of a safe place. Still keeping your eyes open, think of a place that is very safe and soothing and calming. Maybe the beach, the mountain, a walk in the city, a favorite room, or a park. If you cannot think of a safe place, that's okay. Just let yourself notice this room, since we are safe here. Great. Now try to notice everything you can about your safe place. Notice everything you love about it. The color, the textures, the shapes, the sounds, the smells, and the safety and calm of the place. Great. You have done a terrific job, and keep going until at least 10 minutes have been completed. Add more categories or things that make you feel grounded. So now, after having done the three types of grounding, I'm going to ask you to re-rate your negative feelings on a 0 to 10 scale, 10 being the most negative. Has the rating changed from the initial one? So most of you may have went down at least a point or two. Other people more than two. Other people didn't, and that's okay too. It's important now that we think about, we just discussed how this exercise have been for you. Did you like it? What did you like? What did you dislike? What type of grounding worked best for you? How did you feel after the exercise? Were you able to focus your attention during the exercise, or there were parts that they were a problem for you? It's great that you tried, and you were able to focus on it. Now let's think about specific situations that grounding can help you, and let's practice. Great. So thank you for doing this exercise with us, and now we can just talk about a few role plays or situations in which you may use grounding.
Basically, one of the right now I was remembering that one of the instances when we used this and we actually handed out this script, which is comes from evidence-based psychotherapy called Seeking Safety, was for a counselor, a child counselor who was meeting with a client. The client had for some reason, I don't know if it was happening in the room with the therapist, but had encountered a trigger recently. And she came into the session and she was basically in dissociation. I mean, reliving a flashback. She kept on for many minutes, which was very, very disturbing for everybody to witness. She kept on like pacing and back and forth and kept on saying the same word over and over again for many minutes. This was going on for like 20 minutes, and it was just very difficult to her snap out of it, of the flashback that she was experiencing. So we came in and we helped the therapist giving her the script, and the therapist basically read it out loud, just exactly the way Rosa did. And the girl slowly, came back to the present where she was able to just like realize that she was in the room. So that's just to give you an example of a situation. We had another situation where a client had received, some really bad news, and basically just was triggered into a panic attack, and actually fell to the ground and started to like scream and yell, and she was like, in the ground, laying down, kicking, and the only thing that it took, kind of like asking her, can you tell me your name? Can you open your eyes? Where are you now? And she slowly, came back to like the present. So those are the, again, the situations where we've used it, but it doesn't have to be such a, strong emotion, even if it's like, again, back to the thermometer, it doesn't have to be a 10 or a 9, but, even when, client is just noticing some anxiety, it helps a lot so that they can be more effective and be more in the moment. That's kind of like basically the ways we found it very helpful. And in more of, so anybody can do it, as you saw. It's not very complicated. In for us, in more of like a therapy type of frame, we use it to just, even to go into, if there's any I guess, plan to go into traumatic exposure and describing, traumatic memories. This really has to happen first. because otherwise it might be too difficult to tolerate, the strong emotions. And we want clients to be effective above all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great example. I think just using a personal example, just to give Mayumi the space to talk about de-escalation is like, remember I was in a conference once, and I was in this table with all these colleagues, and there was one of the survivors of sexual abuse speaking about her experience. And I remember back then I was having a lot of vicarious trauma. I was like in my peak, and it was very difficult for me to tolerate to hear all these like detailed statements and all these the experience that she's been going through. It was very upsetting to me. It was really sad, and I remember I was like about to cry. I was becoming very emotional, and I was listening to this person, and I couldn't get out of that place. I was like in the middle of the room, and I remember, okay, let's ground here. So I just started looking around the room. I started like looking around the tables, the purses of the female that were there, the hairdos, the shoes, the colors, the number of chairs, and that really helped me get out of it and be able to finish. For her to for her to finish and to be able to stay there, because there are situations in which you really cannot leave, and that was one of them. And I remember like grounding was a great tool for me to have handy and to do. So just wanted just to share this as a personal experience. Yeah.
So now we're jumping into another topic, and this is verbal de-escalation, and this is what we use. This is a different type of scenario. This is a strategy that we use during a potentially dangerous or threatening situation in an attempt to prevent a person from causing harm to us, themselves, or others. So it really is for situations where the situation is kind of like getting a little bit more out of control. It's really important, and I'll try to maybe come up with a example from our real work experience. But it's really important to understand that when a person is getting agitated, there's typically a good reason why that happened, right? It's typically agitation can be caused by fear, anger, when somebody feels that they're being misunderstood or not listened to, when there's been, bad communication, for somebody who's maybe using substances and that's leading to agitation, or when somebody feels kind of like trapped or intruded, that there is not enough personal space. So the one concrete, situation that I recall working at the Family Justice Center, I came in one day to work, and there was a client. I had never met with this client before, but by the time I came to my office, everybody, in the staff were all pretty, I guess, anxious about it, because she was, yelling and agitating in the waiting room, and was stating that she had come to meet with me. And so they were kind of like worried about like what the situation was. It was very difficult to talk to her in a calm way. And later, as we learned more about the situation, what I learned was that this client had been waiting for several weeks to meet with me. Had been told that I was going to be able to help her with some letter that she needed for I can't recall what the situation was, but the overall situation was that it was a misunderstanding, and she was actually not intended to meet with me. She, for some reason, something happened that there was a misunderstanding, and there was an appointment set up to meet with me. So the whole situation didn't improve when she actually came into my office. And again, she was quite agitated, and I introduced myself, and I told her that I was a psychiatrist. So at that point, she really, became even more upset and told me, like, I've been waiting for this appointment for weeks, and I'm not, I'm not here to meet with a psychiatrist. I'm actually here to meet with somebody to help me out with this letter. And she was in such level of anger and distress because she had been so, there had been so many errors and things that were not addressing her needs, that she was visibly very upset. So I will go into the tools that we use to do the verbal de-escalation, and perhaps use this particular situation as an example. So the first thing is to recognize that when we're asked to verbally de-escalate a situation, we're asked to do something that's not natural, right? Because when we're being yelled at, threatened, our natural reaction is to kind of like respond at the same way. So, but we're asked to actually do the quite opposite, which is to remain calm. So that takes a lot of of skill for sure. The first thing I would say is that the main and most important point is to think about safety, and this is safety for the person who's agitated, and safety for you and for your staff. When you're facing the situation where somebody is visibly agitated, screaming, yelling, or or even threatening, physically, threatening, remember to breathe. Again, it's really hard to stay calm when the situation is stressful, so you almost have to like fake it until you make it, and then just kind of like remember that you want to be effective. Very important, again, to keep a neutral facial expression. So again, even if this is not the natural reaction, if you're being threatened, our typical reaction is to kind of like attack back, but this is not what you want to do. You want to remain neutral and remain relaxed, even if you're not feeling that way inside. If you're hearing somebody's, yelling at you, cursing at you, just remember that it's not about you. It's typically, many different situations that have led a person to feel misunderstood, disrespected. So don't take it personal. It's very difficult to do this, but this really helps decrease your own defensiveness if you remember that this is not about you. And try not to argue or convince the other person about something, because the last thing that they want to hear is orders or something after they've been through so much, or it's been a sequence of unfortunate events and misunderstandings. Again, as I mentioned, safety is first. If you're interacting with somebody who's visibly agitated, make sure that you're at least one arm length, of the distance. Make sure that you ask for help if you feel like you need it, and it's always better to have extra help, even if you end up not needing them. Ask individuals with their name in a conversational manner, kind of like, again, the example that I described. We sat down, I asked her for her name, I gave the client my name, I introduced myself, and that in that particular moment didn't help too much, because she was getting increasingly upset about the fact that she was meeting with me when that was not her goal. She was very upset and told me over and over again, I'm not supposed to be meeting with you, what's going on? And I tried my best to be empathic, to try to understand her situation, and get to the bottom of what was that she needed. So the other kind of like big strategy here is, try to listen actively, and explicitly try to maintain your attention, and make eye contact, but not in an intense way, which might be threatening, but just make sure that the person is seeing that you're trying to understand the situation. And that was kind of like what I was doing. I was like asking her questions, tell me a little bit more about what is it that you need. And it was, particularly tough because she was not, talking too much. She was, for the most part, yelling. But I tried my best to make sure that she saw that I was trying to get to the bottom of this too. It is whatever they're telling you, you can summarize what they're telling you and repeat it, because, and even if it's as simple as basically repeating exactly what they're saying, but this is a really nice way to make sure that the person is seeing that you're really listening. So if they're telling me, I need to meet with the person who's going to give me the letter, I can basically repeat the same thing. Okay, so you need to meet with the person who's going to give you the letter, because that shows the person who's been, typically, again, a series of events of like being misunderstood or disrespected, that we're, that I am being respectful, that I am actually listening to what she has to say.
I also think that what you're saying is so important. Is like the body language, right? It's very, very crucial just to keep your body language neutral, empathic, as like really compassion, curiosity, really understanding what's going on with you, what had happened. I'm here to help. The way your tone of voice, the frequency, the level of your voice, the body posture, very, very, you already emphasized that, but I just,
Yes.
I remember that case and how wonderful you were, like in just telling the client, like, I'm here to help. I'm not angry, I'm not pissed, I'm not, wanting to hurt you. It's really.
Yes, exactly, and especially because if you can imagine that the person has reached to a point where they're quite agitated, and this is happening in front of you, that person has probably already interacted with somebody else that way, and the typical response for somebody who's not trained or not used to doing this is that the other person probably yelled back or ignored them. So kind of like catching them, and in a good way surprising them with your kindness, typically, in most cases would quickly de-escalate somebody who's basically agitated. So again, very simple strategies that are very meaningful are to nod your head up and down to show the person that you're listening to what they're saying. Again, as Rosa said, maintain an open body language, calm and relaxed, even if you don't feel like that way inside. Try not to cross your arms. Smile when it's appropriate. Show that you're concerned. If the situation is de-escalating a little bit, you would have to feel pretty comfortable about this. And say, like, the person is sitting down, you can sit down, or you can even, like, kneel to have the same eye level. But in order for you to be able to do that, you would have to feel like the situation has de-escalated already a little bit, so that you're going to be safe. Avoid judging, criticizing, minimizing, the reason why they're feeling this way. Avoid engaging in power struggles. Just like really try to be helpful, and people will really be able to tell. One, situation that comes very frequently is, telling people to calm down. And even if you say it with the best intentions, because that's actually what we want, uh, using those type of words might be interpreted as an order, right? And that last thing that somebody wants to hear is to have yet another person tell them what to do. So please calm down. It's like, and you typically hear how this kind of like goes wrong. Please calm down, and the person is like, why are you telling me to calm down? So it doesn't necessarily, is not necessarily heard, as an empathic statement. The most helpful thing is to ask more questions, offer to help. Um, so again, going back to the example, the person was telling me, I'm here to meet with somebody who's going to give me this letter, and then as soon as I hear that, I'm like, okay. Deep inside, I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be like really problematic. When I tell her, besides the fact that I'm the psychiatrist and you didn't really want to meet with a psychiatrist, I'm also not going to be able to give you the letter that you need. So I kept on like asking her, more about what she needed, and ultimately telling her, listen, I'm not the person who's going to be able to give you this letter, but I can do my best to look for the person who's going to be providing this for you, and work with you to help you with this, because I understand that you're very upset. I understand that this is incredibly important to you. And that, I think, was kind of like the breaking point where the person, just really calmed down, de-escalated, and really, was more able to have a more, effective conversation. So at that point, when I made a phone call, I asked around, and with the client again in my office, do you know who's the person who needs to help this client with this? And we made it happen. By that point, the client was visibly more relaxed. We offered her some water, and she really relaxed enough to have a conversation with the staff involved. Um, the person, be mindful, the person that is getting agitated is very sensitive to feeling ashamed and disrespected, because probably that's what's been going on, what kind of like created the problem to begin with, the series of events that led to a person feeling, very angry or just, agitated. If things don't go well, if the de-escalation is not working, explain limits and rules in a firm but respectful tone. You can, like, say, for instance, I understand that you have a right to feel angry, but it's not okay for you to threaten me or my staff. And if you keep on threatening my staff or saying this type of things, I will have to call in security, for instance, if things are not really going well. When possible, you can offer choices, self-alternatives, like, would you like to continue our meeting calmly, or would you like to stop now and come back tomorrow when things are better? So those are, again, ways to be firm and respectful at the same time. Try to use positive statements such as, I want to help you, please tell me more so that I can understand how to help you. Let me call this person, I think she might be able to help you with this, and try to, help the person get to the bottom of what they need. So again, putting yourself on their side of finding a solution to the problem, and people typically, even at the kind of like most extreme level of agitation, can see that whether there's somebody kind and trying to be helpful. But at the end of the day, go with your kind of like intuition. If you have been trying these strategies for a few minutes and you see that things are not improving, that they're not de-escalating, it might be time to like call additional people and rethink, your strategy. Always try to explain, to the person what you're trying to do. So like you can tell them things like, the reason why I'm asking you is because I really want to get to the bottom of this. The reason why I'm asking you is because I want to kind of like identify the person who's going to help us with that, or how to go about this problem. Again, if trust your instincts, if after a few minutes of trying this you see that it's not going anywhere, you might need to stop and ask for help. And then the other thing that I would say is, typically we found that this type of situation would require, kind of like the intervention of different people. And it's very difficult, because once you feel like you've been yelled at, threatened, or any of these things, it leaves us a little bit like shaken. So whenever you do any de-escalation, debrief with the staff involved after you do it, to kind of process what just happened. That helps us be more effective the next time.
And you can ground after.
And you can ground after. Yes, after you do the de-escalation, because it's typically stressful, again, because you're asking yourself to do something that it's not necessarily natural. It requires a lot of skill. So then lastly, this is, the books and references where we actually gather some of the material that we discussed today.
Mm-hmm. And thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to chat with you. And I hope this has been helpful. We're gonna follow up with sending some of the materials we just mentioned during the presentation. And good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayumi and Rosa, for this wonderful presentation. We are so grateful, and we know that everybody watching this webinar is going to benefit tremendously. So thank you so much.